Climate Change by Bryn Hasty, Matthew Maurer, and Connor Haynes. Second block, Biology.
Climate change is a global issue that can be described as a change in global or regional climate patterns, which is attributed largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by the burning of fossil fuels.
Why is climate change important? Climate change is silently affecting biomes around the world and is causing catastrophic changes to numerous ecosystems and organisms. Climate change has so many different impacts on various parts of the biosphere, and we must pay attention and be informed in order to make change happen.
About 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century from increased CO2 and other emissions. Chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, which are the release of chlorine atoms into the atmosphere upon exposure to UV radiation, contribute to the seasonal reduction of ozone concentration. Ocean acidification, which is the continuing decrease of the ocean's pH levels, endangers numerous aquatic ecosystems.
Where does climate change affect? Climate change occurs all around the world and affects organisms and ecosystems globally. One location that climate change is specifically affected is the Arctic. The increased CO2 levels from fossil fuels bore a hole in the Arctic's ozone layer, which leads to no protection from UV radiation. The increase in temperature causes ice glaciers to melt, which diminishes the main water resource for numerous organisms. The melting of ice glaciers also causes sea levels to rise, which can cause erosion, flooding, and the destruction of habitats.
What organisms in the Arctic are affected by climate change? Polar bears. When ice glaciers melt, the lack of that main water resource causes not only danger to them, but also to their prey and the food chain they are a part of. Lack of resource endangers producers, first consumers, and the second consumers, along with the polar bears, the third consumer. The entire ecosystem could fail and go extinct. 66% or two-thirds of the global population of polar bears are dying off due to climate change. Humans. 60 million local Arctic people who rely on the ice glaciers for their water supply are losing one of the main resources, which could impact their community devastatingly.
Is climate change even real? The myth. One extremely common misconception regarding climate change that is thought by an abundance of people around the world is that climate change doesn't affect life on Earth and that it is not the cause of any of the supposed effects it has on life. It is also common among people to ignore the issue of climate change completely and pretend they don't see the impacts it has on their environment. The truth. Climate change is an action caused by humans that affects humans and numerous other organisms in the biosphere. All the effects it has on Earth are real and occur because of climate change. All different varieties of biomes and ecosystems are affected by climate change, whether it be negative or positive.
What words will help me remember climate change? Atmosphere, a mixture of gases like nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide that surround the Earth. This word is relevant to climate change because climate change is caused by pollutants that are introduced into the atmosphere. When climate change occurs, CO2 levels in the atmosphere increase and the atmosphere's temperature rises. Fossil fuel, an energy-rich substance created from dead plant animal material trapped between layers of rock deep within the Earth. Over millions of years, heat and pressure turn material into fossil fuels. Examples: coal, oil, and natural gas. This word is relevant because the humans burn fossil fuels to make energy, and when they are burned, they release CO2, a greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere, which contributes to climate change.
How can we help relieve the issue of climate change? What is currently being done? The WWF Action Center has an organization to help organisms and wildlife who are being affected by the effects of climate change and keep them from becoming endangered or extinct by raising money and fighting for changes. What can be done in the future? People can help by ending the burning of fossil fuels and working to discover a renewable and environment-friendly energy resource to use instead of fossil fuels. Adults can also vote on laws and bills that work to lower emissions and fossil fuel use. How can high school students help? High schoolers can help by walking to school or taking public transport services to travel to places in order to reduce the level of emissions. They can also contribute by participating in climate change protests. High school students can be involved in their community by participating in activities that revolve around solving climate change.